happening. It's primary day, and the polls are officially open in New York City. Voters will be deciding among 250 candidates for mayor, city council, and assorted other
It was a very ordinary morning, bright blue sky. The red tourist buses getting ready in Battery Park, and the streams of people coming off the Staten Island ferry. I can still see those images, and I know that a lot of those people never went back on that ferry.
He took us into the World Trade Center and showed us all around it. That's what's
We
awful.
went all round there. We saw
He
it
took us
all.
out to Statue of Liberty, and then he loved that skyline looking back, and he was so proud of those twin towers.
As soon as we got out of the elevators, we headed for a boardroom or a meeting room there, which was overlooking the Bay Area. I remember us staring out over the skyline, and we were both commenting on how beautiful the skyline is and how fantastic the buildings are, and kind of comparing it to other cities and saying, well, New York really does stand out as an exceptional city.
For 28-year-old flight attendant Amy Jarrett, it's another routine day.
Amy's done that flight so many times. I mean, she's familiar with the plane, familiar with the whole procedure, and she probably knew, you know, some if not all of the flight attendants that she was flying with.
Also checking in are 10 terrorists, among them Marwan al-Shahi and Muhammad Atta, who have been training as pilots. They've been planning this day for years. They know it'll be their last.
Just another day, to tell you the truth. I mean, just like any other day. Traffic was bad in Washington, D.C. I do remember, for whatever reason, making a conscious effort to get to work just a little bit earlier than I normally do.
We were just sort of chatting about how things were going, and this took up about half the meeting, actually, just sort of generally chatting, and then we got onto our presentations that we were making to the client. I was second, so sitting there kind of staring out of the window, again looking at the skyline.
Terrorists forced their way into the cockpit of flight AA-11. The plane, now with Atta at the controls, descends on New York.
Chief Gansey was in his office having coffee. At this point, it was approximately somewhere around 8:30 in the morning. I was in my office a couple of doors away, and I heard him yell out, "Look out your window, something just hit the World Trade Center." We all ran to Chief Gansey's office because we looked out, and there was thick black smoke billowing, and we saw flames on the outside of the building. And duty called. It was time to go.
We looked at each other, and fortunately the client we were with screamed at us, "It's a bomb, it's a bomb, for God's sake, get out."
Building started rocking. I stood up again and I looked out the window, and pretty much all you could see was paper swirling all around in the air, just millions and millions of papers. There was some dust and smoke.
We just walked and walked, and we got down to about the 50th floor, and an announcement came over the tannoy. By that stage, people were already talking that there were people behind us in the stairs, obviously people ahead of us, and people were already sort of talking that maybe a plane had hit the first building. And I think at that stage, people thought it was an accident. I think people assumed that it was a small light aircraft, and there had been an accident, and that probably we were in no imminent danger.
There was already people in an elevator that was open. We squished in with those people. A couple more people came through the door. We pulled them in. Elevator door shut. We went down to the 78th floor, where you have to catch an express elevator from the 78th floor down to the lobby. There was already a lot of people down there. Some people were crying. There was a few people screaming. No one knew what was going on.
A message came out over the tannoy. There is an isolated fire in the first building. There is no need to evacuate building 2. And I remember we stopped and we said, well, what should we do? And at this stage, looking back, we were so happy, or so glad that we hadn't left anything in the building, because I remember actually saying to my colleagues, well, should we just go back and resume the meeting? I mean, why not? And people, we weren't the only ones to stop, other people stopped. And I think I vaguely remember other people actually going back up the stairs. As we carried on down, I remember people going the other way against us.
One of the elevators opened up. I was the last one to fit onto the elevator doors. Some people in there were really panicked. They were upset, crying. Most of the people in the elevator were just trying to calm them down. As we started going down, the elevators started scraping a little bit on the sides of the building because of the building was still rocking a little bit, and I think that metal on metal grating sounds just, it's just an awful sound, and it was just upsetting people more.
There's already confusion in the South Tower as Mike Schilliker and Amber Siegel head down. Confusion is about to turn to terror.
We were at this command post right across the street. We heard the plane come in. We heard it throttle up to its maximum. We just heard this loud roar of air, and they put this thing in the fastest. They just pushed the throttle as far as they could. That's what it sounded like anyway. And then you saw this massive crash into the building. This was the worst I think anybody in the history of the New York City Fire Department has ever seen. Anything this horrific in their lives.
There was an almighty bang, and the building shook. The building lurched one way, and then lurched back the other way. And that was the first time I felt really quite afraid. I remember thinking, this must be what it feels like to be in an earthquake. And we're still, I guess, 38 floors from the bottom.
As we were trying to get outside, we came to the stairways that go up and escalators that bring us up to the top level so we can exit onto the street. People behind us started screaming and saying, run, run. People started running, pushing past, shoving people up the stairs. It was pretty much a mob scene.
One of the most vivid sights of the whole day is as we were running away from the scene, we were going in the right direction. There was an absolute stream of firefighters. It was like a train. It was like watching a train with carriage after carriage. It was just one long stream of firefighters and also police cars heading against us. And even at that stage, we knew that we were getting away from the scene and these guys were heading straight towards it.
At this point, there is really no collapse zone you can set up outside the World Trade Center. It's 110 stories high. I don't think at that point we imagined that this building can do anything but burn itself out. We never imagined. I don't think at that point when we initially arrived, that we can even fathom that we would have a collapse situation later on.
Phone rang, and I picked it up, and it was a military friend of mine who works at a installation a couple of miles south of the Pentagon, and she had asked me if I had seen the World Trade Center attack video, and I told her that I did. And we were just stunned about it, and she told me, you know, the Pentagon is probably next, jokingly, and she told me to get out, and we kind of laughed about that and then continued talking. And then she told me again, David, I'm serious, the Pentagon's probably going to get attacked next.
A hijacked plane is already heading for the Pentagon. On board is Barbara Olson, wife of Solicitor General Ted Olson.
One of the secretaries rushed in and said, Barbara's on the phone. And I jumped for the phone, so glad to hear Barbara's voice. And then she told me, our plane has been hijacked. We spoke for a minute or two, then the phone was cut off. Then she got through again, and we spoke for another 2 or 3 or 4 minutes. She told me that the plane had been hijacked, that she told me that they did not know she was making this phone call. She told me that she had been herded to the back of the plane. She mentioned that they had used knives and box cutters to hijack the plane. She mentioned that the pilot had announced that the plane had been hijacked. I believe she said that. I had to tell her about the 2 airplanes that had hit the World Trade Center.
Why?
I just felt that I had to. I had to tell her. I'll look back at that and wonder about that same question myself, but I had to tell her.
CBS 880, right here, right now.
It gets worse. An aircraft has just crashed into the Pentagon.
That moment that just the gates of hell opened up is the only way that I can explain it. The wall just crumpled. First there was you could hear the plane coming in. There's just a whoosh as the plane came in, and just a thud, just this impact that just shook you down to the fiber of your bone. And I saw the wall crumple, and then I was airborne for about 25 feet. I was literally blown into the next office, 25 feet back, and landed still with the phone in my hand. Just everything came at you, and everything sort of moved in unison. And the only thing that I can see was that was illuminated by the flames, but there were a number of flames behind me. And I crawled on top of the wall, and all I can see, as far as the flames had lit up, was just absolute and total destruction.
I noticed this flash had run into the window that we had come into, and it was a person on fire. The entire front of this individual was burning, and the NCO and I immediately dove on this person and slammed him to the floor. And I can only imagine that he possibly saw the light of the window and was trying to get out. He was a civilian. He had a suit on, and the entire front part of his body, everything recognizable, had been burned off. But the suit, the arms of his suit were still attached. The back of his suit was still on, and I even noticed the back of the shirt and coat was still around the back side of his collar. Basically, it had just been melted into his body.
I remember making a conscious decision to live. I remember deciding, I'm getting out of here. And we just started stepping over the rubble. Because my fear was the smoke was so bad. My fear was that we would be entombed in that area, and I knew that we didn't have any time. If we had to start moving rubble, I just knew that there would be no time to do so because the smoke was so bad. You couldn't breathe. It was just this burning sensation. Moments before impact, moments before that fireball hits you, there's a vacuum that happens, and all of the air from your lungs just escapes. And the first breath that I took, I remember it just being this intensely hot, thick, fuel-laden air that I breathed in that stung all the way going down, and in my lungs you could just feel this heat in your lungs, and I knew this can't be good. And we just started climbing over the rubble to get out.
We had people jumping from the buildings from 85, 90, 100 stories high. It was terrifying. These people, you would just look up and they'd be sailing through the air, and then they would hit the sidewalk and it would sound like somebody dropped a ton of concrete right at that point. Every one just kept hitting one after another. These people took death in a different stroke. They didn't want to die by fire, and they were forced out of the building, and they were forced to their death one way or the other. People were jumping, crashing through the atrium glass roof. A firefighter had gotten hit by a jumper, and he subsequently got killed. And it was just mayhem. It really was.
So we arrived at the Fort Fire Command Post. I was filming, there was a part of a body covered in a blanket in the road, a bloodied body. There was fire engines, ambulances still arriving. I filmed all this, and the fire was raging above our heads.
Somebody rang the States, spoke to Liz, his wife, and she said he worked in a needle. And it was the 103rd floor. I went back inside the store and looked, and just watched in disbelief, to be honest. Absolute horror. I sat there watching every TV channel there was. You watched the American ones, you watched the British ones, and every time there was a reporter there, you were looking beyond the reporter, you were looking for people's faces in the background to see if you could see them. And you just sit there and just, like I suppose everybody else, it's just absolute disbelief. What was just unfolding in front of your eyes.
I love you. I'm in the World Trade Center. The building was hit by something. I don't know if I'm going to get out, but I love you very much. I hope I'll see you later. Bye.
Sean, it's me. I just wanted to let you know I love you, and I'm stuck in this building in New York. A plane hit the building or a bomb went off, we don't know, but there's lots of smoke, and I just wanted you to know that I love you always.
You can only imagine my thoughts and fears, and then to hear my wife's message. I immediately tried to call her on her cell phone, and it wouldn't go through. I later went to voicemail, and still to this point, her voicemail is full. So you can no longer leave messages.
Fire commissioner, who was in charge of the fire department, was setting up his forward command post. He was listing all the units that were arriving on scene, how many officers had gone into the building, how many officers were outside, and how many units were outside. And bearing in mind these guys are underneath the towers with all their vehicles. And suddenly there was an almighty explosion, and I panned the camera up, and through the viewfinder I saw the 4 walls exploding on the second tower, and we all started running together. I looked back and it was chasing me, big time, and not behind me, but from above, and it was like a big hand coming down on top of you like this. Coming down like that, and I knew at that point it was going to hit, and I thought we were goners. And I went down on the ground. I had a sound recordist with me, and I saw she went down. The firefighters that I were with went down as well, and we were engulfed in total blackness. So I started to crawl, and I knew by keeping my head down low there would be some oxygen, but I thought with all the debris and dirt around there would not be air to breathe, and I really thought I was going to die. I thought, this is it. You've had it, Paul. This is the biggie.
We were on the ramp of a garage, and it forced everybody on that ramp. There was probably close to, I guesstimate, is 100 people on that ramp who were forced into the garage, which at the time seemed very safe when we were setting this up. But in retrospect, we went running in there, retreating, if you will, and we found ourselves trapped. Zero visibility, had no idea where we were going. Wound up in a dead-end garage. We had to look for staircases. We had to find people with tools so we could force the doors to these staircases. And we all got out of, from that initial collapse, from our position.
I looked around and it was an unbelievable scene. You know, Hollywood couldn't create anything like that. I just stood there for a minute looking at this total devastation. There was an odd figure, an odd fireman, staggering around, covered in everything. And I thought the World Trade Center's collapsed, you know, on top of us here. And here I was right in the nucleus of it, in what they're calling Ground Zero now. And we were alive.
Nurse Wendy Green from Lincolnshire is on a day off.
Groups of people were standing around vehicles, listening to news reports on the radio. I heard that all the firefighters in New York were to report to work at this time. Every firefighter in New York was to call into work. And I think that realization was, to me, that this was huge. This was a big deal. And so what I did was I walked down to 14th Street, where St. Vincent's Hospital is. This is where I am an employee in the emergency room. And I went to work.
Come down the steps, everything fine till we got to the basement, and then everything just fell in. I got trapped under there with another guy, crawled out, kept getting hit in the head, had bags floating around. Finally, we clawed our way out over the rubble.
Yeah.
Come on down. We did all right.
All right, way to be, Tom. Let's go.
The scene was like nothing that I've ever seen before. A lot of people. My specific role was to tend to the victims of the World Trade Center as a trauma nurse. It meant that I was allocated to patients that were coming through the emergency room that were severely injured, and prioritizing and stabilizing the patients. The injuries were pretty horrific. There was a lot of burn victims, burns which probably came from aviation fuel. Patients with blunt trauma, abdominal injuries, patients who were not breathing, patients who had head injuries, closed head injuries, cardiac arrests, fractures, open fractures.
Cece was a flight attendant on Flight 93 for United. And during that flight, some things happened, and she called her husband. She said, "Babe, we're being hijacked." And he said, "Don't kid about something like that." And she said, "I wouldn't kid about something like that. We're being hijacked." And she proceeded to tell him a couple more things that were happening and said, "I just called to let you know how much I love you, how happy I've been with you. You've made me very happy. And I want the kids to know how much I love them too."
The hijackers direct the plane towards Washington. Their target is the president himself. But this time, a group of passengers decide to fight back.
I'm
Tanya, from the plane, we've been taken over. There are 3 men that say they have a bomb. And I said, well, who are they, Mark? And he repeated that he loved me, and he said, I don't think he said, I don't know who they are. He became distracted there as if someone was speaking to him. And he said, it's something to the effect of, it's true. And then the phone went dead.
He described them to me. He said they have red headbands. There were 3 of them. And they had a box with something red around it. He asked me that the World Trade Center had just collapsed. And he had asked me, are they going to crash this plane into the World Trade Center? And I said, I don't think so. It's not there anymore. He was confused as to whether they were going to blow the plane up or if they were going to crash it into something, and he needed to know that.
It seems like as the plane started to fly erratically and turn around, he became aware, maybe through information from other passengers, that this plane was not going to be a normal hijacking situation, that he actually said to her, we're not going to get out of here. I think he thought, okay, I've done what I need to do, and now it's time to act. And he told her that a few of the passengers, and he did mention Jeremy, had decided they were going to jump on the hijacker with the bomb.
I told him to go ahead and do it. I trusted his instinct, and I said, do what you have to do. I knew that I thought he could do it.
He went down fighting. I know he did. His adrenaline was going. He was not whispering. He was talking quickly, and he was ready to do something. He was trying to get home, and he did not expect this to end the way that it did.
With the words, "Are you ready? Let's roll," Todd Beamer leads the attack.
As soon as I heard that phrase, I knew that would be his cue to say, we're going to do what we need to do here and put our best foot forward.
You're listening to live coverage on KQV Pittsburgh of today's terrorist attacks. A 4th plane crash in Somerset County where it was United Planes.
In the chaos, Steve Mosiello is separated from his boss and lifetime friend, Fire Chief Pete Gansey.
Chief Gansey asked me to get him some more companies, and he will tell me where he's at, where his location is. He called me on the radio, and he let me know where he was exactly. He said, Steve, I'm on West Street, on the west side, 50 feet south of where our command post was. When you get me those trucks, you walk them down, stay on the west side of the street, and bring them right to me. I, of course, like I normally do, said 10-4, Chief. We started rescuing up our 2 trucks. I started my way down there, got a few feet, and the second building blew.
It's coming down on me. Here it comes. I'm getting behind a car. It's incredible. Okay, I'm gonna have to go find people who need help, because I don't think I'm one of them. You okay, sir? Okay. Can I just get a toot off your respirator? Can I get a toot? I'm just getting a couple of clean breaths. That's good. Okay. Back to you. This is the car I hid behind. It saved my life.
Yeah, Mike! Hey. Mike! Hey. Mike, come over here! Yeah!
Anybody need a doctor?
Where are you?
Don't have oxygen.
Hello, Doc.
Hey, that guy needs some oxygen if someone can share it with him.
10-4.
Thanks.
You're just praying and running, choking to death because you just can't breathe no more. It took about 4 blocks before I had any sense of visibility where I was, as was the other thousands of firefighters that were at the scene in this same predicament. And now I tried to call Chief Gansey on the radio.
Mayday, mayday, mayday.
And I prayed that he retreated to the same portion we retreated to earlier. I got no response. No response whatsoever. I went back to the scene, went to the members that were digging. They found the chief. And now it was time to go to step 2, which was to notify his wife.
They told me just to wait here at this semi-staging area. See if I can help, and that's what I'm doing. They won't let me go any closer. No one can go in to get the people out. There's small explosions still going on. Not a thing that you think about, you just move, try to get out of the way. That's it. Be thankful that I wasn't in closer. The bravery of the people who went in there is something else.
This was not something that you get on the phone and do. I was feeling so much pain for this family that I would see them every day and never see my friend again. The fact that I had to go into that house and tell this woman that I know for this many years that her husband has died, I can't even explain it. You're walking in, you know you did nothing wrong, but you're apologizing and apologizing, and it's not a good sight. I have in the past had to go to firefighters' homes and tell their wives that their loved one passed away at a fire. This was a little different for me.
United Airlines ring the mother of flight attendant Amy Jarrett.
I got a phone call. I identified myself as Amy Jarrett's mother. And there was silence. And I said hello. I thought maybe we had lost the connection. And she said, I regret to inform you. And that's all I remember. I dropped the phone. And fell on my knees. And my husband, Bruce, took the phone over. And that was the beginning of the end. I miss her terribly. We all miss her. I'm still waiting for her to call me on the phone. Amy always called me. Always when I got to the airport. I'm here, Mom. Call me from her hotel room. I'm here, Mom. Okay, honey, I'll see you in a couple of days. I'm still waiting for that phone call.
I mean, there were some absolute heroes in this, and the heroes are the people like the firefighters who were so desperate, who are still there, who are working 24 hours a day, who are still there. The heroes are the people who helped people to get out. But we are not heroes. We are just incredibly lucky people.
I felt I just wanted to go back to the scene, see what else I can do. I was in the service, and I never saw a battle zone like this. I was in Vietnam. I never saw a battle zone like this, ever. There was cars destroyed, fires everywhere. From all this flying debris, there was a parking lot just north of Vesey Street, on the west side of West Street, that had a bunch of cars in it. Half the cars were on fire. Looked like somebody just dropped a bomb there. And, you know, and there was fires burning in other buildings now from the hot debris that when it exploded and it went into windows in other buildings. So it was, it got ugly real fast at this scene, real fast.
We didn't know until 10:30 that night. And we ran to the phone because we thought it was Graham. See?
Well, I ran.
Well, he ran and I eventually got there. And let's pick the phone up. They asked him his name. And was he on his own? And he said, no, my wife's here.
I knew then.
And they said, we're sorry, we've sad news for you. Your son was on flight 175 that went into one of the finance buildings. And Les says, oh my God. And I stood and said, what? And he turned to me and he says, Graham was on one of them planes, Pauline. Of course I said, oh no. And I ran screaming from the kitchen to that end and back again. And he tried to stop me and I fought him off. I couldn't stand him. I couldn't stand anybody to touch me. I didn't want him on that plane and I didn't want that news. And I was just inconsolable. And then we realised we'd been watching our own son in the aeroplane.
It was nighttime. The place was illuminated. We had a lot of lights set up. The rescue operations were in full force as they were all day. And we were looking for everybody. We were looking for civilians. We were looking for brother firefighters. We were looking for anybody we could to help and hope that every step of the way we found somebody that was alive.
I don't want to give up hope. I want my brother to come out the way they rescued the 2 firemen. That's what I am hoping. I wanted to hope that he'd gone down to the deli to get a coffee or something, that he'd gone into work early and that he was ready for a coffee or a break, and that for some reason he had no cause to be at his desk. But that looks very unlikely.
There's 2 sides to it. I think I'm realistically optimistic. I'm hoping for the best, fearing the worst. And when I stood watching what was unfolding on the telly at the time, I find it hard to believe that anybody could walk away from that.
What has bothered me the most, there were people in the hallway, and that we couldn't get to them, and that they were fellow soldiers and they were on the battlefield, and I guess I kind of equated to the fact that we had to leave them behind, and I really don't know how to. I really don't know how to understand that, because I never thought that I would ever be in the aspect of the fact that we'd have to leave somebody behind.
So many people are hurt and grieving and in sorrow. All their loved ones, not only my Amy, children without mothers and fathers, and so many circumstances. We need to unite. We need to stop this hatred, this evil that's in this world. And I think we've shown by what's happened that we can come together as a world. We can unite. If we try, we can be strong and put some of these differences away. It has to end. It has to end.
When I'm around, I'm always aware of danger. I'm always aware, because I work with emergency people a lot in my business. I'm very much aware of it. And when I'm driving my car, I'm very much aware of danger and where I can get out and where I can do this. And often with the people I work with, the girls I work with, I say, look, if something happens, just hit the deck. There's more oxygen on the floor, and there's this and there's that and the other. And I think you have to be aware at any time, any place now. Bang. You know, you're on the front page.
The World Trade Towers, gone, and so are hundreds and likely thousands of lives.